For every Marvel masterpiece that blew our minds, there's another that made us question reality, like, did Marvel really make that? Today we're ranking the 5 most loved and the 5 most hated MCU movies ever. Starting off strong, Avengers: Infinity War. This isn't just a Marvel movie, this is Marvel at its absolute peak. I still remember walking out of the theater in complete silence, like, did that really just happen? For 10 years, Marvel built this universe, post-credit after post-credit, all leading to one purple dude sitting in a chair. And when Thanos finally showed up, he didn't just enter the story, he owned it.
Fun isn't something one considers when balancing the universe. But this does put a smile on my face.
Marvel did something no one expected. They made the villain the main character. And that's what made this film hit different. Half the movie you're low-key thinking, wait, why do I kinda agree with Thanos? The battles? Absolute chaos. Wakanda was on fire. Doctor Strange was out there throwing spells like he was in a Pokemon tournament. And Hulk? My guy got retired in the first 5 minutes. Folded like a lawn chair. But nothing, and I mean nothing, compares to that ending. The moment the screen faded to dust, the theater went from cheering to complete silence. People just stared, mouths open, popcorn frozen midair. Infinity War wasn't just a movie, it was an event. It made every Marvel fan feel like they were part of history. And ever since that day, Marvel's been chasing that same magic, and honestly, they still haven't caught it. Infinity War raised the bar so high that Marvel's been tripping over it ever since. And nowhere is that crash more obvious than Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. Man, this movie had all the potential in the world. Multiverse, Kang, high stakes, and somehow it still imploded like one of Kang's timelines gone wrong. The trailers? Absolute fire. It looked like Marvel was about to give us another Avengers-level event.
Turn it off. Now!
But what we got instead felt less like a story and more like a 2-hour CGI roller coaster. Bright, loud, and dizzying enough to make you question your eyesight. Now don't get me wrong, I love Paul Rudd. His charm carried the first 2 Ant-Man movies. Small scale, funny, lighthearted, but Quantumania ditched that entire vibe. Instead, it went full discount Star Wars prequel inside the quantum realm, with characters that looked half-rendered and environments that screamed PS3 cutscene, and not even the good kind. I'm talking GameStop bargain bin level graphics. And for a movie that was supposed to raise the stakes for the next era of Marvel, it somehow felt empty, like the universe didn't care about what was happening. Kang the Conqueror was meant to be the next Thanos, a villain who could rewrite time itself. But when your supposedly unstoppable conqueror gets beaten by a colony of ants, yeah, you can't come back from that. Jonathan Majors did his best, he really did, but the writing made Kang feel less like a cosmic threat and more like a mid-level boss in a side quest. And don't even get me started on MODOK. That was nightmare fuel for all the wrong reasons. Oh, and where was Luis? The guy's storytelling was one of the funniest parts of the entire Ant-Man franchise.
And so Carlos and Ernesto are on the same softball team. And they get to talking, right? And here comes the good part. Carlos says, yo, man, this guy's got a big-ass safe just sitting in the basement, just chilling. Of course, Ernesto comes to me because he knows I got mad thieving skills. Of course, I ask him, did Emily tell Carlos to tell you to get to me what kind of safe it was? And he says, nah, dog. All she said is that it's like super legit, and whatever's in it, it's gotta be good.
And without him, this movie felt lifeless. It's like Marvel tried to make Endgame without any of the heart, and in the process, they lost the soul of what made Ant-Man special in the first place. In the end, Quantumania became the perfect symbol of post-Endgame Marvel. Overstuffed, over-rendered, and completely directionless. And when you stack that up against something like Iron Man, the movie that started it all, the difference is night and day. Before we continue, hit that like button and subscribe, because what Iron Man did back in 2008 still gives me chills. This movie isn't just loved, it's legendary. At the time, nobody believed Marvel could pull this off. Robert Downey Jr. was a gamble.
For your consideration, the Jericho.
Superhero movies were hit or miss, and Marvel Studios was just another underdog trying to survive. But then, Iron Man happened, and it didn't just stick the landing, it built the entire runway for everything that came after. Downey didn't just play Tony Stark, he became him. The humor, the ego, the broken genius. It all clicked perfectly. Try imagining anyone else in that suit. You can't, because RDJ is Tony Stark. And here's the wild part. Without him, there would be no Avengers, no Infinity Saga, no MCU as we know it. That one film reshaped the entire movie industry. And remember, this was before Disney, before the billion-dollar budgets and CGI overload. Iron Man was personal, grounded, character-driven. It was about a man building redemption out of metal. Those suit-up scenes, pure cinematic magic. Even today, they look incredible. Marvel took a B-list comic book hero and turned him into the face of modern pop culture. It wasn't just lightning in a bottle. It was the spark that lit the entire Marvel universe. And when you look at how beautifully Iron Man launched the MCU, it makes something like Thor, Love and Thunder feel like a cruel cosmic joke. Now, talk about a movie that felt like Marvel was trolling its own fans. If Iron Man was Marvel firing on all cylinders, Love and Thunder was Marvel slamming the self-destruct button with both hands. Taika Waititi got a little too high on the success of Ragnarok, and somewhere along the way, he turned the God of Thunder into the Clown of Thunder. I'll be honest, I loved Ragnarok. It had the perfect balance of comedy, action, and character growth. But Love and Thunder, it threw all of that out the window and replaced it with punchlines that felt like rejected TikTok sketches. Every emotional moment was instantly ruined by a joke. Thor's grief, joke. Jane's illness, joke. Even the serious moments landed like bad stand-up at an open mic night. And those screaming goats? Funny for the first 10 seconds, then pure psychological warfare. The CGI didn't help either. Some shots looked like they were rendered on an iPhone 6. That floating head, it looked like a cursed Snapchat filter from 2015, and not even the funny kind. What hurts the most is that Christian Bale as Gore the God Butcher could have been one of the greatest villains in Marvel history. He had the look, the presence, the menace, and yet the movie gave him less screen time than a background extra. How do you waste Christian Bale like that? And Jane Foster's return. That could have been emotional, powerful, tragic. Instead, it felt like Marvel checked a fan service box and moved on. The worst part? Love and Thunder didn't just fail. It embarrassed one of Marvel's most iconic heroes. Thor went from a warrior god to a punchline in his own story. And after watching that disaster, it made me want to go back and re-watch Ragnarok just to remember what greatness used to look like. A movie that honestly feels like it came from an entirely different universe, even though the same guy directed it. Before Ragnarok, Thor's solo movies were, well, let's be honest, the weakest part of the MCU. The first one was fine, The Dark World was a nap with lightning, and most of us had already written Thor off. But then Ragnarok dropped, and boom, everything changed. The tone, the color, the humor, the energy, it all just worked. You could feel the spark the moment the movie started. It was loud, bright, weird, but in the best way possible. The comedy landed perfectly without killing the emotion, the action was straight out of a comic book, and the visuals, pure eye candy. That arena fight between Thor and Hulk, it felt like watching a childhood dream come to life. And unlike Love and Thunder, the CGI here actually looked stunning. The kind of visuals that make you pause and just stare. The cast was pure gold. Jeff Goldblum as the Grandmaster, delightfully weird in the most Goldblum way possible. Cate Blanchett as Hela absolutely owned every frame. She was everything Gore should have been. And at the center of it all, Chris Hemsworth finally got to be Thor. For the first time, he wasn't a stiff Shakespearean god. He was funny, confident, and still completely badass. Ragnarok gave him personality. It gave him life. And looking back, Thor's arc from Ragnarok to Infinity War is some of Marvel's best storytelling ever, which makes it even more painful that everything Ragnarok built, Taika Waititi bulldozed in Love and Thunder. But if Ragnarok was Marvel rediscovering its magic, the next one on this list, Eternals, was Marvel straight up losing its soul. Man, this movie doesn't just miss the mark, it obliterates it. At least Love and Thunder had moments you could ironically laugh at. Eternals gave us nothing. Absolutely nothing. 2.5 hours of slow-motion boredom disguised as art. Marvel dropped 10 brand new characters on us all at once, with zero build-up and expected us to care. But every single one of them felt like a cardboard cutout with a name tag. I walked out of the theater trying to remember who was who, and honestly, I gave up halfway through. The pacing? Brutal. Every time the story started to move, boom, another flashback that killed the momentum. It was like watching a PowerPoint presentation that didn't know what slide it was on. The deviants were forgettable, the Celestials looked cool for maybe 30 seconds, and the rest, just flat. Flat dialogue, flat tone, flat everything. And the worst part? Marvel really tried to sell this movie as bold and visionary, the start of a new era, something different. But what we got instead was a bloated, self-important mess that forgot to actually entertain anyone. It wanted to be deep, but it barely had a pulse. It wanted to be emotional, but it didn't have a soul. Eternals is one of the only MCU movies I would never, ever rewatch. And that's why when you compare it to one of Marvel's best films, the difference is cosmic. And when you stack Eternals up against Captain America, the Winter Soldier, the difference is night and day. This movie didn't just redefine Steve Rogers, it rebuilt him. Let's be honest, before the Winter Soldier, most fans saw Cap as the Grandpa Avenger. Good morals, shiny shield, always doing the right thing, and not much else. But then the Russo brothers walked in and completely changed the game. They turned Steve from a walking poster boy into one of the most complex heroes in the MCU. For the first time, he wasn't just fighting villains, he was fighting the system. A soldier in a world where truth was twisted, friends were enemies, and the people he trusted most were the ones betraying him. And watching him go from the government's perfect soldier to dismantling SHIELD from the inside, that was chef's kiss storytelling. It still blows my mind that this was the Russo brothers' first Marvel movie. They showed up and immediately dropped one of the best action sequences in the entire MCU, that claustrophobic elevator fight. Then the Hydra twist. Then the highway battle that felt raw, gritty, and real. No cartoon CGI, no cheap humor, just sharp direction, heavy punches, and tension that stuck with you. The Winter Soldier made Captain America cool. It turned a moral boy scout into a living, breathing symbol of rebellion, and it proved that superhero movies could be more than flashy suits and quips. They could be intelligent, political thrillers that hit hard. Marvel struck gold with this one, which makes what they did next all the more painful, because Captain Marvel tried to fly, and somehow still crashed. Yeah, that didn't exactly go the same way. Captain Marvel is the definition of a billion-dollar letdown. And before anyone says, but it made over $1 billion? Yeah, because Marvel dropped it right before Endgame. At that point, they could have released a 2-hour video of Kevin Feige reading grocery receipts, and fans would still have lined up for tickets. But the movie itself? Lifeless. It had the emotional range of a malfunctioning robot. Carol Danvers starts the film insanely powerful, and ends it even more powerful. There's no arc, no struggle, no human moment that makes you root for her. It feels like Marvel just handed us a memo saying, here's your new face of the MCU, deal with it. And look, strong female heroes aren't the problem. Black Widow, Wanda, Gamora, they're all layered, flawed, and human. Carol, though, she was written like a checklist instead of a character. It's the Rey from Star Wars effect all over again. Unstoppable, unrelatable, and ultimately uninteresting. Even Nick Fury couldn't save it. He went from legendary super spy to comedy sidekick. The Skrulls were wasted, the twists fell flat, and that big eye reveal moment, a cat scratch. Really, Marvel? That was your grand mystery payoff? And that's the saddest part. Captain Marvel could have been a great origin story. It had the ingredients: cosmic scope, 90s nostalgia, a blank canvas for something new. But instead, it felt rushed, political, and just plain boring. And when you put it next to a film like Guardians of the Galaxy, which also introduced a brand new team nobody cared about, and still turned them into fan favorites in 2 hours, the difference is staggering. And then, God bless James Gunn. The man took 5 total weirdos, threw them into a spaceship, and somehow made us care about every single one of them. That's the magic of Guardians of the Galaxy. It shouldn't have worked. A talking raccoon, a tree with a 3-word vocabulary, a green assassin, a muscle-bound literalist, and a guy who dances to 70s music in space. But somehow it did. The reason it worked is simple. These characters had flaws, humor, and heart. Star-Lord was immature, but lovable. Rocket was bitter and broken. Drax was accidentally hilarious. Groot was pure, innocent wholesomeness. And Gamora, she kept them all grounded when everything else was chaos. By the end, they weren't just a team, they were a family. And that soundtrack, it wasn't just background music, it became the soul of the movie. Every song hit perfectly, giving the story its own rhythm, its own personality. No other MCU film at the time had that kind of vibe. That blend of chaos, color, and emotion that made Guardians feel alive. That's exactly what movies like Captain Marvel and Eternals missed. Gunn didn't build his story around powers, he built it around people. He made us laugh, and then he hit us right in the heart. That moment when Groot sacrifices himself, still one of the most emotional scenes in the entire MCU, and it's between a raccoon and a tree. That's talent. That's storytelling. Guardians of the Galaxy was fresh, fearless, and full of soul. It proved that Marvel could take the most random, unknown characters and make them icons, which makes it even more painful when you realize what came next. A movie that should have been an emotional goodbye for one of Marvel's greatest heroes, but instead ended up feeling like a missed opportunity. And finally, we have Black Widow, one of the most forgettable MCU entries, and honestly, one of the most disappointing, because this one hurts. Natasha Romanoff wasn't just another Avenger. She was the heart of the team. The quiet one, the grounded one, the one who kept everyone together when everything else fell apart. And yet, she never got her own solo movie until after she was already gone. Like, what was even the point? This should have been her victory lap. A raw, emotional farewell to one of Marvel's most beloved heroes. Instead, it felt like Marvel checked a box and tossed out a filler story nobody really asked for. The timing was brutal. Dropping 2 years after Endgame made it feel completely irrelevant. A movie trapped between past and future, adding nothing meaningful to Natasha's legacy. And the villains? Wasted potential. Taskmaster could have been an all-time great, a mysterious, terrifying mirror of Natasha herself, but ended up as one of the blandest, emotionless characters in the entire MCU. Florence Pugh's Yelena was the one bright spot. She brought warmth, personality, and charisma to every scene. But that only made it worse, because Natasha ended up feeling like a guest star in her own movie. And that's the saddest part. After everything she sacrificed, after all the battles she fought, she deserved a send-off that mattered, something powerful, something unforgettable. Instead, Black Widow came and went, and that's the worst thing you can say about a hero who gave everything. Marvel dropped the ball here. She deserved better. And that's it for today's list. If you enjoyed the breakdown, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into the MCU, and drop a comment telling me your favorite and most hated Marvel movies. Because one thing's for sure, when Marvel gets it right, it's legendary. But when they miss hard.